Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second InVhestia webinar on dashboards. Your host and trainer, David No, financial analyst from InVhestia Africa. Quite excited about this training and looking forward to sharing my experience on dashboards with you guys. Okay, so something to point out is that this webinar will be recorded and the video will be made available on our learn.investia.com platform as well as our YouTube channel, InVhestia Africa Limited. So as soon as the content is ready, we'll share it out. So feel free to check it out in case you want to revisit the whole aspect on creating the dashboard. Just a quick snippet of how we'll do this. So first of all, we'll walk through the theory aspect before we get on to Excel. And the beauty with going through the theory aspect is that you get to understand how a dashboard works, and also just to give you another overview before we actually look at Excel. So just to dive straight at it. So we'll first of all introduce InVhestia for some of you who have not interacted with InVhestia before. We'll also talk about the dashboard. We'll define a typical dashboard and how the structure looks. We'll also go into data visualization in terms of how to present data on Excel. We'll maybe touch on how to create interactive dashboards on theoretical, but we'll see how this works on Excel. And lastly, we'll finish by generating sensitivity tables on Microsoft Excel. So a bit about InVhestia. InVhestia is a financial advisory firm that offers project and corporate finance advisory services to its clients within the region. So it also offers financial modeling and training services for both corporate and project finance. We also do capital raising for some of our clients, both corporate project specific. So we've worked with companies and projects all over Africa. We've done some work in Nigeria, Zambia, and so on and so forth. The chart to your right actually just shows you our footprint. We are sector agnostic, so we've worked with clients from energy and power, financial services, agriculture and FMCG, real estate, amongst others. And I'm sure you probably spot one or two logos that you're familiar with from that particular slide. So in terms of financial modeling, we use a standard called FAST, and FAST standard was created through a collaborative effort of experienced financial modeling professionals. So in the past, people used to come up with financial models that will assume different structures, but more and more we've seen more structure coming into the modeling process, and this is because it improves on various aspects of the financial model. It improves on readability, it improves on structure, it improves on transparency and things like that. We'll see how FAST as a standard really champions the advantages of having a structure when you're dealing with financial modeling. But just to dive into the acronym FAST, this slide just talks about the users of FAST in the world. But just to talk about FAST as an acronym, FAST stands for flexible, appropriate, structured, and transparent. So flexible meaning that when you use FAST, the models are very flexible. It allows for one to change inputs, change how the model operates and things like that. It's a very flexible model, and we'll see how that is when you get to the financial modeling aspect. There's also an aspect of appropriate. The information that we summarize on the financial model is always appropriate, and we try as much as possible to avoid unnecessary detail. It's also very structured in terms of it has computation blocks that makes it very consistent and ensures that there is flow in terms of the financial model. It also allows for transparency. So you'll notice that a few things or a few rules that FAST has incorporated in the standard is that maybe you can't even use a hard code in a function just to improve the transparency aspect. So those are the key aspects that FAST is bringing on the table, and you will see how a FAST model looks like. So you can actually check out FAST under fast-standard.org. The link is there. We'll share this presentation on Monday, so you can actually feel free to click on the link, and you'll have more insight as to the standard itself. About myself, my name is David Ndu. I'm a financial analyst at InVhestia Africa. My background is really in accounts and finance. I've worked with InVhestia for close to 6 years. I've done numerous financial models in different sectors, real estate, manufacturing, energy, and FMCG. So let's start off let's start off by defining what a dashboard is. Now, a dashboard is really just a visual representation of the key performance indicators of a business. It allows for a quick review and analysis of the organization's performance, therefore easing the decision-making process. So what you have in front of you is actually just a snapshot of how a typical dashboard will look like. On the left, you'll have your key financials and ratios. On the right, you'll have your valuation, assumptions, and graphs, what we normally call the key model outputs. And below, you'll have your sensitivities. And you'll notice that something interesting about how we prepare our dashboards, basically based on FAST, is that there's a very interesting structure to it. Everything is put into sections. So for instance, you have this section that just primarily deals on financials. This section, as I mentioned, just deals with the key model output. And this is something that we'll see once we get onto Excel. Benefits of having a dashboard, of course, it makes the decision-making process a bit faster, because you have everything on one report. It's much easier for you to make an informed decision, which brings about the second benefit, that it empowers users to make an informed decision. And lastly, with a good dashboard, you can actually inspire the different departments or the key departments to pull their weight to ensure that there is continuous improvement in the organization. But let's first of all discuss what someone needs to think about before they go before they actually start the dashboard preparation process. So what these slides simply tries to in summary, it just summarizes the questions that someone is supposed to ask before they prepare a dashboard. And it's very important that one asks this question, because it defines, or it will lead to whether you will end up having a functional dashboard, or you'll end up having a dashboard that might not really help at the end of the day. So the first question that you want to ask yourself is, what is the purpose of developing the dashboard? And in answering this question, it's important for you to understand the different types of dashboards that are available out there. The first one is operational dashboard. An operational dashboard is a dashboard that usually contains more frequently changing data, and this is normally used when when a person wants to see how frequently changing data is affecting the operation of the business. For instance, most firms that do digital marketing prepare operational dashboards for their clients that just shows how the traffic is to their website and things like that. The second type of dashboard is a strategic dashboard, and most of the analysts and senior managers have interacted with this. It simply defines the key business metrics, it defines the financials, and it's just the key points that are needed to make a decision, a go or a no-go, for instance, when you're looking at a valuation of a company. The third type of a dashboard is called an analytical dashboard. An analytical dashboard simply is simply used for by companies that are within the space of data manipulation and survey, where they look at large data sets and they try and establish trends from the data sets, and using those trends they can easily say, look, this is where the direction of the market is going forward. In our experience, for one to prepare an analytical dashboard, actually the best tool to prepare an analytical dashboard on Excel is the pivot table. So if you're not familiar with pivot tables, I would suggest that you have a look at it. But specifically for this webinar, we'll be focusing on the strategic dashboard. So moving on, this next question that you need to ask yourself is, what are the key outputs needed for decision making? And this is important because you need to start with the end in mind. You need to know what you're trying to say before coming up with the dashboard. And it's critical that you understand that. The next question is, who will be the end user of the dashboard? And in most instances, you'll find that dashboards are used by both analysts and also decision makers who don't understand the financial modeling process. So you need to make a dashboard that is robust enough to communicate to both parties. Excuse me. So the fourth question you need to ask yourself is, how do I present this data in a way that makes it easy to understand and interpret? So here you'll probably be using the data visualization tools, charts, bar graphs, and things like that to make it more presentable and easy to understand and interpret. What level of summary is acceptable? This is a very interesting question, because from a financial model, the dashboard is actually part of a financial model. So in case you're in a meeting and someone wants to explore the details of a dashboard, you actually have access to the details. So when you're making a dashboard, you just want to capture the key elements of a financial model. Don't put everything on the financial model, but also don't summarize things too much that you leave out some of the key intricacies or the key details of the business. The last question that you need to ask yourself is, how do I prepare the dashboard in a way that is very easy to update? So this is all about making the dashboard a bit more interactive. So moving on, structure of a typical dashboard. When designing a dashboard, you need to keep the following things in mind. One is that you should have continuous flow of information in the dashboard. Based on the FAST standard, we always advocate for this flow where you're moving from up, going down, and from left to the right. And this is basically based on how most people read reports. The second item that you need to keep in mind is that for a dashboard to be easily understandable, you need to segment the same into groups. So we've seen how you can segment the same into financial reports, financial ratios, and things like that when you're looking at a sample dashboard, just at the beginning when you're defining dashboards. But just to highlight the key section that you need to ensure that are always present when you're looking at a strategic financial dashboard. So one of them is a key business or project metrics. You also need to ensure that there is a financial statement section. You also need to ensure that there is a key ratio section. You need to have charts. You need to have key outputs of the financial model. If you're doing a valuation model, you'll probably have your key outputs as your value based on either, depending on the type of valuation you've done, either using DCF, multiple approach, and so on and so forth. You'll also need to incorporate sensitivities. Sensitivities are just tables that allow one to test how independent variables affect dependent variables. So how an input affects your output in this case, and you will see how we can do that on Excel. So next, just briefly talk about data visualization. Data visualization is the graphical representation of data into graphs, charts, images, and diagrams. It's simply a tool that allows one that makes it easier for one to understand trends and outliers, and also establish a pattern in data. So when coming up with charts, one has to remember that anything that does not contribute to the meaning of a graph is actually a distraction. So we need to avoid things like background pictures on the plot area. Some form of grid lines are very distracting, so you need to make them a bit faint. Axis lines should be visually subdued compared to the data, so you don't want your axis lines competing with your data points. So you need to make them a bit faded. Then you need to avoid misuse of color. You don't need to have bars that have different colors and very saturated colors. Okay, so this image just simply summarizes the types of charts that are available and what type of information you can actually put within those charts. And we've put the source there, so feel free to actually check out excuse me, that website. It more or less talks about the different types of charts and how they can be used for presenting information. So just a brief, when you want to present when you want to compare data, so you have an option of using, and just pick a few of these bar charts, horizontal or vertical. You know, it's interesting that these are actually options that most people don't think about. So mostly bar charts, horizontals are used when you have a lot of variables. So you have more than 6 variables. It's actually better if you use a bar chart horizontal compared to a bar chart vertical. The other thing, perhaps when you're doing comparison, especially over time, you want to use line charts, because line charts kind of show a trend of how things are moving. I will really not dwell so much on this. I just mentioned a few more. So the other thing that perhaps you probably come across is distribution. When you're doing distribution, when you're dealing with data that deals with distribution, there are different options. You can either use a bar histogram, line histogram, or a scatter plot. When you're dealing with data that you want to define what the data is composed of, you have the option of either using static or depending on the data, whether it is fixed data or data that keeps changing in time, you have the option of either using a pie chart if it's more of a static type of information, so that doesn't really change over time. So for instance, pie charts are used when you want to maybe break down the components of an expense line. So for instance, if it's total expense, you can put admin expense, operating expense as part of the components of the total pie chart. There is also waterfall charts, which really just shows accumulation or subtraction to the total. You also have stacked 100% bar charts, which you can actually use when you have timely data, but then you just want to show how each of them is moving compared to 100%. So really, when we share the presentation or the report, please feel free to check out the source. They've explained most of these charts in detail. So really won't spend so much time on this. So moving on, how to make interactive dashboards. So dashboards allow users to manipulate the output of a financial model from the dashboard without necessarily navigating through the different sheets. So if I wanted to change, for instance, a key input, maybe cost of capital that changes or that affects my evaluation, an interactive dashboard will allow me to change that just within the dashboard and not necessarily going to another sheet. So we'll see that. The last item will be on how to generate sensitivity tables on Microsoft Excel. Just a bit about sensitivity tables. A sensitivity table is more or less like a sensitivity analysis that seeks to compare how different values of an independent variable affect a particular dependent variable. Let me give you an example. For instance, if you want to see how changes in interest rate affects your value, I think the example we had here is how does the sales growth for a business affect the value of the business. So a sensitivity table will allow you to test those variables against the output of a financial model. Okay, so that is all about the theory aspect of the dashboard. So let's get on to Excel and see then how you can come up with a dashboard. Okay. Okay, so what you have in front of you is simply an extract of our online case study. We currently have an online course under the learn.investia.com that has very interesting content. It has content around how to come up with a financial model, how to do a valuation of a company. It also has project finance, project finance, what are they called? Project finance online course studies. And so something you probably need to check out is we have a free version, which is like an introduction to fast. So you check out and learn.investia.com. There's something called FM100 that just gives you a snippet of what goes into financial modeling. I would propose that you look at that. So this is simply just an extract of the FM101 course, which is a paid course. It's called Corporate Finance and Valuation. So what we did is that we used now the content from that particular course to prepare this start file. So maybe just to take you through a brief of how the model is structured, and this is how a typical fast model is normally structured. So what you have under your red sheets are actually just presentation sheets of the output sheets. So from your cover page, which simply just talks about the company name, when the model was prepared and who prepared it, to the next sheet, which is a disclaimer that gives now like a disclaimer of any liabilities and things like that. There's a table of contents that simply just summarizes key details of the modeler when the model was prepared, and also just gives you the shortcuts to the different sheets that are contained within the financial model. The next sheet is your valuation sheet, which is simply just summarizes the different valuation methodologies that were adopted for this business. You have your ratios sheet, you have your FinStat, which is a financial statement sheet. You have your scenarios, and this is just a sheet that is used to change a couple of scenarios in the financial model. So the next sheets are the assumption sheet, and you'll start with your INPC sheet, which stands for input constant sheet, which represents non-timely based assumptions. Next to it, you have your input S sheet, which represents the time-based assumptions. Then you have your financial statement actuals, which are just simply the summary of the actual financials for this business. Then the sheets highlighted in gray are just your computation sheet, and the last sheet is what we call a template sheet. So whenever we are creating a new sheet, we normally use a template sheet because it gives us a place to start from. So we'll see how we'll get to use the template sheet when we're preparing the dashboard, excuse me. So something just to point out about this case study, the The company is called MAT Kenya Limited. It's a manufacturing entity within the tobacco space. And the case study was, or the whole idea for this assignment was to come up with a value for the business. So it was, if you go through the FM 101 course, you'll be taught how to forecast the financial statements, you'll be taught how to come up with the forecasted working capital, how to incorporate the dividends payouts and things like that to end up with a proper financials. Then you'll be taught how to come up with a valuation, or how to conduct a valuation for this business. So I really won't get into the details of how the same was derived. We'll just maybe focus on how to prepare a dashboard for this type of business. However, feel free to drop a comment and we'll address it towards the end of the course in case you need any further clarification on how to enroll for the course. So to start creating the dashboard, as I had mentioned, we'll use a temp sheet. So the first thing you want to do is you go to your temp sheet and you click on it. Yeah, it opens the temp sheet. And what you want to do is you want to create a copy of this temp sheet. Now, the easiest way to create a copy of the temp sheet is you hold the control button. And while you're holding the control button, click on the temp sheet and drag it. You'll notice that there's something that appears on top of my pointer. So it's like a sheet, but it also has a plus sign within the sheet. So that shows you that you're adding the sheet. So I'll come and place it just in between the ratios and FinStat sheets. So I just drop it there and voila. So it's created a temp2 sheet. So the first thing you need to do is rename it. So you right click on temp2. It opens this dialog box. You click on rename. Once you click on rename, we will call this dashboard. Okay. Enter, and you have renamed your sheet. The next thing you want to do is change the color of your dashboard. You want to make it red because it's simply just an output sheet. Okay, so click on red, and there you go. So the next thing you want to do is you need to get rid of the content that is already there, and so you need to come to row 7. Come to row 7 and highlight the entire row by clicking on the digit 7. Then while holding the left button, just drag everything and highlight everything below it up to row 22. And the easiest way to do this is you right click and click on delete. There you go. So you clear the content. The next thing you want to do is remove this title called model column counter. We won't be needing this for our model. So click on number 5 as well, row 5, then press delete to get rid of it. Okay, so the other thing we need to do is we need to open up some hidden columns. From column number W, you notice that you really can't access what is contained beyond that. So we need to open up and access what is hidden. Now, the easiest way to do this is you click on column number W, column W. Once you click on column W, drag your cursor all the way across to the gray area. Then what you need to do is go back to column number W and right click. This pop-up should appear, then choose unhide. Once you choose unhide, it should automatically unhide everything. So the other thing you need to do is now to get rid of the content that relates to the post focus, because if you're doing a dashboard, you really want to restrict it to what is relevant to the decision maker. So you really don't need any information post a focus period. So what you're going to do is again highlight column U, then select all the way to the end of the post focus period. So should end on BZ. And what you'll do is that you'll come under editing, and under editing you have clear, and click on clear all to get rid of the content. Okay, excuse me. So the other thing that you need to do is go to column CA, click on column CA, then press Control, Shift, and right arrow to highlight the columns all the way to the end. Then what we'll do is that we'll hide those columns. Now, the easiest way to hide is to right-click and choose Hide. Okay, so let's go back to our time ruler. So this is how it looks. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is try and establish sections for our dashboard. Now, we know very well that we have key items that need to go in, key items that need to be represented in this dashboard. So the first element is on key metrics. Then we will do the financial statements, and we will finish with the key ratios on one side. Then on the other side, we'll start with your key model outputs. Then we'll finish with sensitivity. So we need to separate the dashboard into two sections. So what I'll do is that I'll come to column U, and I'll click on column U. Okay, then click on fill color, drop down, yeah, and I want you to select the third gray. Yeah, so it's background 1, darker 25%. Click on it, but you fill the color. Then I want you to reduce the size of that column slightly so that it looks something like that. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is come to A7, go to A7, and we'll start by computing or linking our dashboard to our key metrics. So let's type key metrics as a column header for this particular section. So the next thing you want to do is highlight the row from A7 all the way to T7, like that. And we'll use a different color for this particular section. Perhaps we'll do, we'll try and do a different color. So looking for, probably do red. So just click on red, yeah, and maybe we need to change the color of the font to white so that it looks something like that. Okay. So for a manufacturing business, you need to understand what are the key metrics for this type of business. And it really depends on the type of business that is being implemented. It depends on what the manager wants to or what the decision maker wants to see at the end of the day. So it's very important for you to understand the type of business before you actually summarize your dashboard. So in our case, for a manufacturing entity, we know very well that it's big on how much volume it pushes out there, because that now will define the revenues, and also it is big on the cost of manufacturing. So our key metrics that we'll use or will display here in our dashboard will be number 1, the sales growth rate, and number 2, we'll have the cost of sales for this business. So we'll start off by using the longhand way of doing the linking process. However, I'll also take you through the shorthand way of linking this dashboard to the respective cells. So the longhand way is you come to E9 and you press equals. And since we know the sales growth is actually based on time-based assumption, we'll go to InVhestia sheet, which is the input series sheet, and click on it. So this opens up. Then what we'll do is that we'll select E37, click on E37, then press enter. So immediately you do that, it appears on the dashboard. So what we'll do is that we need to copy this across. We'll do the longhand way of just dragging it all the way to T9. Yeah, and press F9 if you're on manual computation mode. Just press F9 if you're on manual computation mode. You'll notice that there are some, it appears as 0, but we know that growth rates are normally in percentage form. So what we need to do is change this into percent. So you need to highlight the entire section and go to numbers under the home tab and click on percentage style. So it appears as the correct values. The next thing you need to do is now link this again to your cost of sales. We do the same process where you press equals under E10 and go to input S, because we know cost of sales is also a time based assumption. So we'll click on E41, then press enter. So again, it appears on this side. So we'll drag it all the way to the end. Yeah, and the next thing we need to do is press F9 for it to appear as the correct values. Then lastly, you need to change the format to appear as percentage. So there you go. Now you might notice that I'm running on manual computation, but if you want to change that into automatic computation, where once you do the transfer, it will automatically update without necessarily having you press F9. The easiest way to change that is you go to formulas, and under calculations options, click on the drop down. It allows you to choose a couple of things. So you have automatic except for data tables, and manual. For me, I'll put it on automatic, which means that every time I do a computation, I really don't have to refresh my Excel to be able to see the impact of my computation. So I'll just put it on automatic for now to make it a bit easier. Okay. So that is those are the key metrics for this type of business. The next section will be really talking about now the key financial statements. So we'll just call them financial statements. Note that I've typed this on A12. Just note that I've typed this on A12. And what we need to do is also color code this in red and have the text in white. So we'll fill the color in red, then have the font in white. There you go. Okay. So our first financial statement will be, of course, your statement of comprehensive income. So you go to B14 and type statement of comprehensive income. And what you want to do is highlight this section and color it in a different color. You most certainly don't want to use red. You want to use, perhaps we'll use green for just our case. Let's see which type of green. That green looks okay. Okay, so remember we used the longhand way where we had to press equals, go to where the values are coming from, but we have something called macros on FAST that allows us to do certain functions on Excel a bit more efficiently. So if you want to learn more about FAST, again, just enroll for FM100 or FM11 course, and you'll get to understand how these macros really make your life a bit easy. So I want to relocate a couple of things under the theme start. And it's very important for one to know what the key elements of the financial statements are. So for instance, we'll start with the comprehensive income. I know for sure what the managers will want to see is the revenue, cost of sales, the gross profit. They probably wouldn't want to see the breakdown of marketing, distribution, and admin and other operating expenses. So I'll skip these two. Then I'll just have the EBITDA as one of the key deliverables. Maybe I'll put depreciation as one of them as well. We need to put the financing costs. Then I'll have the tax, and lastly, I'll put now the net profit after tax. It builds for, it's an easier way of summarizing the income statement without necessarily losing the content of that particular financial statement. So the easiest way to do this, if you have macros, is that you need to highlight the elements we've mentioned. So I'll highlight revenue, cost of sales, and gross profit. While holding the control button, I'll click on EBITDA, I'll click on depreciation, I'll click on net finance costs, I'll click on tax, and lastly, I'll click on net profit after tax. Then after those elements are highlighted, I'll press Control C. Control C is shortcut for copy. Then I'll go to my dashboard, and under E16, I'll press Control Shift Q, and voila, you have your elements summarized under your dashboard. The next thing I need to do is for consistency, I want all my figures under the dashboard to be in black. So I'll convert these into black by pressing Control Shift B. So they are now in black. Then what I'll do is that I'll drag this across to copy the same across, and you'll notice that you have a lot of hash errors. Mostly you experience hash errors because maybe the cell is not in the right format. So since we know we're dealing with numbers, you just need to click on comma, and that way you will have the correct figures appearing. So the other thing is, if you still have issues like we do from column number M to T, it shows you that perhaps the columns are not wide enough. So what you need to do is widen them. So what you need to do is come to column number M, highlight all the way to column number T, sorry, then double click, and that way you should have the same fitting or the error disappearing. Then the next thing we need to do is put some borders just so that we can show where there is addition. So we know revenue minus cost of sales will give you gross profit. So what we need to do is show that there is actually a computation being done there. So we'll highlight row 17 from E17 to T17. Then you click on what appears under font section. There's something called bottom border. So you click on it so that it shows you that there's a computation there. The other thing that you need to do is also highlight the net profit, because that's key and it's important for people to note that. And for this, we'll put double border, one at the top, the other one at the bottom. So we need to go and look for top and bottom border and click on it. So once you click on it, it appears like that. The last thing you want to do is also make this to bold it up. So you just press Control B to make it bold. Okay, so that's a summary of statement of comprehensive income. So moving on, we will need to do statement of financial position, and we will type that under B25. So under B25, just type statement of financial position. Okay, and we'll highlight all the way. Then we'll from A25 to T25, and we'll make it green. Now for this, we'll make it easier. We'll just take the key elements. We'll take the current assets while holding the control button. We'll also take the non-current assets and total assets. Then we'll also take the equity section when you're talking about the equity and liability section. We'll talk about your non-current liabilities. We'll take your current liabilities, and lastly, we'll take your total equity liabilities. So as soon as you have all of them highlighted, you just press Control C to copy. You'll notice that you have something going around within the different cells that you highlighted. Go back to the dashboard and press Control Shift Q, and voila, you have it appearing on this other side. So again, we need to convert this into black by pressing Control Shift B. Then you'll notice that it's important for you to put a space between what you have under your total assets and what you have under your total equity and liabilities. So what you need to do is highlight row 30, right click, and insert a new row there. So then what we'll do is that we'll copy this across all the way. There you go. We need to change it into numbers. Then the last thing is for this section, you will click on top and bottom border and press Control B to make it bold. Yeah. Then we'll do the same thing for equity and liabilities all the way to the end. Yeah. Make it values. Highlight all the way to the end. Okay. Top and bottom border, then press Control B to make it in bold. We really won't summarize the statement of cash flows. Perhaps that would be, you can try and also include that. In your case, in the interest of time, we'll we'll just focus on these two financial statements. Now, the next section would be to summarize the key ratios for the business. So I'll just type under A36 key ratios. Okay, so then I'll highlight from A36 all the way to T36, and I'll code this section in red just so that it's aligned as the key the other key headers that we have up there. Then I'll make this font white so that we look something like that. Now, the other thing I need to do is now relocate this to the dashboard. So I'll go to your ratios, yeah, and we have your return on equity, you have your return on assets, and you have your debt to equity ratios. So we'll start with the return ratio. So go to E13 and click on it. So make sure that you're referring to it. Then while holding the control button, click on E19 so that both cells are highlighted. Then press Ctrl C to copy them. Go to your dashboard, press Ctrl Shift Q to paste them. Then what you need to do is convert this to into black. So Ctrl Shift B to make them black, and you copy it across all the way to the end. So the last thing we need to do is make this percent. So Control Shift P is your shortcut, or you can actually click on the percent icon. So what we have here is really just your return, ratios. Okay, so the last ratio that you want to move is just simply your debt to equity ratio. So you come to E28, press Ctrl C, go to your dashboard again, under E42, press Ctrl Shift Q, Ctrl Shift B to turn it to black, then copy it across. Debt to equity ratios is normally, then you'll find that you need to also show the decimal. So click on the comma style, then increase the decimal by clicking on this particular button. Then we'll call this section the leverage ratios. So we're done with one section, which just summarizes the key metrics, the key financial statements, and the key ratios. So let's go to this second section that will now talk about your key model outputs. It will also talk about your charts. So go to B7, and highlight all the way to the end of your dashboard. So the easiest way to highlight is when you're at B7, press Ctrl Shift and hold, then press the right arrow to highlight all the way to the end. Then press, click on fill color to fill those cells with the red color. Then you highlight the font in white. So we'll call this key model output, and we'll put a hyphen and say valuation. Okay. Then we'll make this in bold. Okay, so there you go. So we need to now relocate this, we need to link this to our valuation assumptions. So what we need to do is under W9, just type item, then move to the next cell, that is X9, and type amount. Then the next cell under Y, you now need to type the units, just to give you some sort of structure for this. Okay, so the first thing we need to move is your discount rate plus your growth rate. So go to your valuation sheet, and under E44 and E45, highlight those two cells. Control C, go to your dashboard, Control Shift Q, highlight all the way. Then another shortcut that perhaps would be helpful is Control R if you want to copy things to the right. Then we need to change the color to black, so press Control Shift B, or you can use longhand where you change the font color from your font tab under your home section. The other thing is now once we have summarized the cost of capital, your growth rate, the other important thing will be the date when the valuation was done. So go to your valuation sheet again and scroll down, go to E61, press Control C, go to your dashboard, Control Shift Q to paste it as a link, then Control Shift B to change the color to black, then copy it across. There you go. So the last thing we need to do under the DCF approach is to now carry or to link the valuation. So we need to scroll down to where the value is, okay, which appears under the equity value appears under E91. So under E91, press Control C, go back to your dashboard. Under W13, press Control Shift Q, turn it into black, copy it across. Okay. So that's your valuation. In this case, we did two forms of valuation. We did both the DCF and your multiple valuation. So we need to also copy the multiple valuation. So go back to your valuation sheet and scroll down. We'll need to pick the key multiple, which is key ingredient, which is E99, and also our valuation figure, which is located under E11. So while holding control, just click on E11. Press Control C, go back to your dashboard, press Control Shift Q, turn it into black, then you just need to copy it to the next cells. So double click on W to make everything visible. Now we'll need to make this appear as a table. So we'll highlight the entire section, then go to your under your home tab, under the font section, there's something called more borders. Click on more borders, dialog box appears. Then under color, we want to have our borders in black. So I'll just click on black here. Then for our outline, we want it to be in black, so it's already highlighted. So we'll click on that. Then for the inside, we want it to be in dotted lines. So we'll click on dotted lines and click on inside, and then click on OK. So our table appears in that form. So then what we need to do is fill the color in red so that you have the headers in red. Then we'll put the font in white, but it appears like that. And we've made it bold. We'll also need to do the same thing for equity value DCF using the DCF approach. So we'll click on fill color, then we make the font white, make it bold. Same thing applies to our multiple valuation. Click on fonts, click on fill color, then click on font color and make it bold. Then we move it a bit to have that appearing. Okay. So before we get on to the sensitivity, let's plot two charts just to summarize the key drivers of this business. So go to cell V25 and highlight all the way. So under V25, if you highlight all the way to BZ25, click on fill color and to make it red, and also click on the font color to make it white. Then we will mark this section as charts. We'll call this charts. Then we'll make it in bold. And unfortunately, we are running out of time. So my apologies. We might go above time a bit, but please bear with us. We are almost done. So under the charts, what we need to plot for our case would be perhaps we need to have the growth rates indicated and the cost of sales margins indicated as in the charts. We also need to probably plot how our revenue is moving compared to our net profit after tax. So we'll use a shortcut when you're plotting these charts, and I'm hoping you'll find this helpful. So the first chart that we need to plot is growth rates, and since growth rates are normally, growth rates are rates, so you need to plot it using line charts as opposed to bar graphs. So Going to E9, select E9 and E10, and while holding the control button, select P9 all the way to T10. Yeah, and the shortcut for coming up with a quick chart is pressing Alt F1. To press Alt F1, it comes up with, you can actually come up with your quick chart. So what we need to do is, first of all, move this to the right place. So I'll move it to where the charts are supposed to be. So I'll move it there. Okay, the next thing I am supposed to do is ensure that we have the periods appearing at the bottom. We really don't want a chart that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because someone will not know what exactly you're referring to. So you go back and click on select data. So under select data, you have this edit button. So click on edit button. This should align with the data that you're using. So I'll select from P to T and press enter. And just like that, you have your information appearing at the bottom. So I need to change this chart to be a line chart. So I'll go and click on change chart type, and this pop-up appears. I'll click on line and select the first one, then click OK. So you should have the charts appearing like that. The thing is, since we have the same growth rate across the focus period, you don't see any change on any of these lines. The other thing we need to have, and this I think it's also just to improve understandability, we need to move this on top. So just to ease understandability. So the easiest way to do this is right click on the labels and click on format legend. Once you click on format legend, this dialog box should appear. Then you choose top, and there you go. So we'll call this chart key metrics. Okay. So the next the next graph will be on revenue. So go to revenue, and we'll plot this against the net profit after tax. So while holding your control button, just press click on E23, but both of them are selected. Then go to cell M16 and highlight the revenue section all the way to T16. Do the same thing for your profit under E23 all the way to T23. Then press Alt F1 to have your quick chart. We need to change the dates. We need to have the dates, so we need to click on edit under this dialog box and highlight the section M4 to T4 and press enter. So then press OK. So then that should be how it appears. Then we need to drag this now to our charts section. Okay. You also just need to expand it a bit, and we'll do the same thing for the labels down here. So we come and click on them, then we right click, go to format legend. This should appear, then click on top. There you go. So we'll call this revenue to profit. Okay. Okay. So we are more or less almost there. So the last thing we want to do is we want to create a sensitivity table, and a sensitivity table is really just a sensitivity table is really just a way of comparing change in input based on comparing how an output is affected by a change in input. Now, most of the times you want to do your data table or scenario sensitivity analysis next to where the information or the data or the input rather is located. So in our case, we know most of our inputs are located under input C, and what we'll try to do is do a sensitivity of the cost of capital and your growth rate compared to your value. Now, what you have there is simply just a table we'll try to prepare that will allow us to do the data table. Now, how did we prepare this? we actually started by keying in what would be the lowest cost of capital that we're looking at for this type of company. Then we just added the cost of capital by 1%. Then on this side, we had the valuation number that had been linked to the valuation sheet. So if I was to delete this just to show you how we came up with this, go to your valuation and click on E91, F91 rather, press Ctrl C, go to your input C and press Ctrl Shift Q to paste it as a link. That's how we actually came up with this particular table. Now, this table is important because it will now help us come up with the sensitivity analysis for this business, where we're looking at change of cost of capital to how it affects the valuation. So what you want to do is highlight the entire table. So highlight from E46 all the way to F58, and then click on data. Under data, click on what if analysis and click on data table. This pop-up will appear, and it will ask you whether you want to provide row input cell or column input cell. In our case, we'll be providing column input cell. And then what you need to do is now, once you click on column input cell and you have this appearing, you now click on F38, which is our column input cell where the cost of capital input is located. So click on it, then click on OK, then voila, there you go. So you have your valuation changing based on your cost of capital, and you will expect it because with the increase in cost of capital, you expect your valuation to reduce. But let's see what happens when you look at the growth rate. So we'll do the same thing. We'll highlight the entire table, then go to your what if analysis, click on data table, and a column input cell. You link it to F39 in this case because we are checking the impact the growth rate has on your valuation. So click on F39 and click on OK, and voila. So there you have it. So that is how you come up with a one variable data table. Now, in some instances, you might want to come up with a two variable data table, which shows you how both cost of capital and growth rates affect your value for the business. So what you have here is just what we call a two variable data table. So what you want to do is, again, highlight the section that will contain your data table, then click on what if analysis, then click on data table. Yeah. In our case, since there's information that is running across the row, there's also information that is running across the column. You need to make sure that you choose the correct figure. So the growth rate runs across the row, so I need to link this row input cell to the growth rate. So I'll click on 4.47, which is under F39. Then a column input cell goes along the column, so I'll click on F38, then click on OK, and voila, so you have it. So you have prepared a sensitivity table or sensitivity analysis, both for one variable and also for two variables. Now, the last thing we want to do is now move this sensitivity table to our dashboard. So highlight all the way to row 55. So from E45 to F55, then press Ctrl C, go to your dashboard, and just after AA9, just press Ctrl Shift Q. And there you go. So you actually have created a link to your data table. So press Ctrl Shift B to make the data to be black. And what you need to do is just expand this. I will also make this appear better when we now make this look like a table. So go back to home, click on more borders. Remember the process, change the color to black. Then click on outline, then choose the dotted lines for the inside, click on inside, then press OK, and there you go. So the other thing we need to do is make the labels to be white and also the cells to be filled with red. So click on fill color red, then click on white for your headers. Control B to make the thing bold. Okay, so that is more or less how to create a data table. The last thing you want to do is get rid of any unused space. So we'll need to hide everything from column number A, B, all the way to BZ. highlight AD all the way to BZ, then press Control 0 to hide. Yeah, the other thing you want to do is highlight all the rows that appear from 60 all the way down. So select all the way to the end of your sheet, then right click and just press hide. Okay, so that is how you hide the cells. The other thing you want to do is go to view, remove the grid lines, and also at times it doesn't really make sense to have some of the historical. So we'll try and group most of them. So we'll probably just leave 2 historical periods. And the easiest way to group this is you highlight the periods. So I'll highlight from J to M, then go to data, then click on group. This appears. So if you click on the minus sign, then it should compress most of the columns. Then the last thing you want to do is also check whether there are columns that you don't use. For instance, we are not using column number F. So go to F, then delete it. Right click, then delete. We are also not using column number G, column G, sorry. Go to G, right click, then delete. So really the last final thing that you want to do is perhaps now create a header for your dashboard. So what I'll do is that I'll go to the first row and row 1 and just merge the entire thing. So go and merge the entire thing and maybe make this to be in gray, or yeah, gray, that. So there you have it. So that is how you come up with a dashboard. I hope you've learned something new, and I hope now going forward you can wow your colleagues or your boss with interesting reports or summaries of the models that you've prepared. What I will want to do is perhaps open up the session for any Q&As from the team, and since we are actually out of time, we'll try and restrict this to maybe 5 to 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand, then I'll I'll give you the go ahead to ask the question. Yeah. You can also, we have an active chat, so please feel free to chat. If you have a question, you can always type it out under the chat section. Again, as I had mentioned, this video will be available on our platform on the learn.investia.com. It will also be available on our YouTube channel, InVhestia Africa Limited. Please feel free to check it out and see whether you can replicate what we've just done. Also check out our FM100 course. It's a free course that introduces people to financial modeling. We also have our FM101 course that is the corporate finance, and FM102 that is the project finance course. And yeah, I'm sure you've learned something interesting from those online content. So I don't know whether there's anyone who has a question. Anyone who has a question? Okay, so that's an interesting question, John. So I don't know whether this is it's actually opposed to everyone. So there's really not a rule as to how many charts you can have in your dashboard, but you really want to just restrict it to the most important charts that you need to have on your dashboard. You really don't want to have so many of them that it kind of also loses the meaning, or charts are meant to summarize what you have in your financial model. I'll give you an example. If you look at what we've done, you actually have given context in terms of the numbers, and you've also given 2 or 3 charts to show the trend and things like that. So I would say try and look through the data that you are sharing to make sure that a chart will be the most available, or the best option that you will need to use when preparing your dashboard. I hope I've answered your question, John. Okay, is there any other questions? Okay. So thank you, John. So thank you so much, guys, for your time. It's been a very interesting session. I hope you guys have learned something new. Again, I had mentioned this video will be available, so feel free to check it out. Also, if you have any questions, any clarification that you need, please write to our platform at learn.investia.com and our platform email, and then we can see how we'll assist you with this. This information will also be available on our platform, and we'll try and share this content with the wider group, so that people can also be conversant with the process of preparing a dashboard. So the last thing to mention is that the MET, this case study that we've used is actually available on our InVhestia.com platform. You can actually feel free to check out our website, and you will find the final MET model there, and that has a dashboard, and you can easily just see how then that same model we can see how then that dashboard was prepared, and it's more or less what we've done today. So with that, thank you so much, and do have yourself a lovely evening, and enjoy the weekend ahead. Bye.